Welcome to Village Values Podcast. I'm your host, Neima Abdulahi, Emmy-nominated culture journalist, and thank you so much for tuning in. My special guest today is none other than Drea Fernandes, a seasoned PR professional with roots tracing back to Guyana before making her mark in the dynamic landscape of public relations in the United States. Drea earned her stripes in journalism and mass communication at St. Bonaventure University and later delved into the world of public relations at Hofstra University's master program. Her professional trajectory led her to craft PR strategies for entities such as Revlon, Elizabeth Arden, and Britney Spears fragrances and more. Her company, Speak Media Group, has worked with REVOLT, NFL player Jonathan Jones, and his Next Step Foundation, Ciroc Vodka, De Leon Tequila, Factory Lab, 19 Keys, luxury eyewear company Dita Eyewear, and so much more. And now she is right here sitting next to me as my sister, as someone who I consider a close friend, and it is such an honor to have you on Village Values.
It is a true pleasure to be here. I never do this, as you know, so I always say no, but I cannot say no to you.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
I receive it. I appreciate it. Going through all the list of your accomplishments, it is super impressive.
Wow, thank you.
And one question I want to ask you is, how do you first and foremost define success?
I would say when I first started my business, I told myself I wanted to be successful, right? Like I knew I had to be successful, but I didn't know what that meant. And the way I defined it, I think along the way has changed. And I honestly think it changes every year, or it changes whenever a goal changes. But where I am in this season right now is, for me, success is whatever allows me to do the thing that I feel like God put me here on earth to do while feeling fully at peace in anything that I'm doing. Like whatever I'm doing shouldn't be something that is stressing me out, because then I don't feel successful. I could be making a ton of money and I'm stressed, which is where I was at one point in my career. I was like, I'm making really good money, but I'm stressed. Like this doesn't feel like success to me. I don't feel like I sleep well at night. And now where I am in my career, I love what I do. I am happy. I'm at peace. So for me, this feels like success. Can I make way more money? I think we all always can. But for me, like this is what feels like success in this moment. Wow, I haven't said that out loud, but so that's where I am.
How has that worked for you to slow down enough to say, how can I redefine what success is based on just my inner healing, just everything that makes me who I am?
Yeah, I take a lot of time for me, a lot more now than I ever have in my career. I'm making it sound like I'm super old, but you learn a lot along the way.
For a little bit though.
Yeah.
Give yourself credit.
Yeah. And I never, like when I started, I was so, like I was always passionate about the thing, but I was also so like just always running. Like I would wake up and I would just run. I'd wake up and I'd run and I'd just keep doing it. But that was just like the energy that I had for it. And I still have that energy, but now it's more balanced. Now it's more, I need to make sure that I set time aside in the morning where I pour into me. Like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'm not looking at work for like the first hour or two. Like I want to pray. I want to meditate. I want to go to the gym. I want to not do any of this. Now, do I get to do that every morning? No. But I know those are the things that keep me mentally healthy. And when I'm not mentally healthy and when I'm just running, like I'm not getting the best version of me for me, and I'm not showing up as the best me that others need. I'm not showing up as the best me for clients, So it's like I have to make sure every morning I'm pouring into me, and then that way I can show up for others. And then, there's also the things that I do quarterly where it's like I'll go away and shut everything down for like 3 to 5 days. 5 days is my ideal, but if I can get 3 days in, I really silence everything and I make sure that I'm mentally good. I just unplug from it all and I'm like, am I okay right now? Like, is everything good with me? Like, I know the business is doing well and everything is good, but am I okay? And I have to do that to make sure that, like, along the way, everything is flowing the way it needs to.
Yeah, you and I were able to relate to each other in so many different ways. And one of the things that we relate to is just our cultural background. Tell me about your family's history, cultural identity, and how that has made you who you are.
Wow. Family history.
Because your upbringing is like the thing that makes you who you are.
Yeah.
I would love you to kind of share that, because people don't get that insight into
Yeah.
What made you who you are today?
Well, first off, I am in the process of doing my naturalization to become a U.S. citizen. I started it this year because it's frustrating having to do your visa all the time. I'm like, I have to pay for it. I have to spend 2 hours applying for a visa. So being a permanent resident is about to be behind me. I'm going to be a citizen of the United States.
I love that.
But I was born and raised in Guyana, South America. And I see every day how like my background influences who I am today. And I really see it when I take those times to just like unplug and like listen. I'm like, oh wow, like I do this thing because of where I come from. But I grew up in a poor country, you know. There's good and bad that comes with that. The good, I would say I appreciate things in a very different way. The bad is like being afraid of losing things, right? So when you're afraid of losing or afraid of going back to what you came from, there is a level of fear that can happen. And I don't believe in having fear. Like I have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard to not move in fear because of what I grew up seeing, because of where I come from. But I think it really just teaches me to appreciate things in a very different way. The values that my parents even instilled in me teaches me to appreciate things in a different way. And even the things that I work for, you know, it feels very much more than just surface. It's like, what is the impact I'm having in the world? What is the impact I'm having on people who are less fortunate? Because I grew up all around that, you know, like my family, I would say like at this point, it sometimes feels lonely because like everyone in my family, like a lot of people are still trying to find their way in their thing. So there's a lot of that. So it's a little hard to speak with family members about the things that I'm working on, right? Because it's like their understanding of it is different. And you have to learn to not like fault them or not like be upset because they don't understand something, right? Rather,
because they only understand it from the scope of the life they're living.
Exactly.
Where they may not have exposure to understand it from your perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure you know what that's like, right? Yeah, like, and it's difficult, but there's also like there's good and bad in all of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just grateful for like where I come from and just everything that it teaches me along the way.
And how does that play into the dynamic of being an entrepreneur as an immigrant? Because not only are you fighting through the barriers of being a Black woman in America, you're also an immigrant in America too, trying to live out your own American dream. So it's like multi-layered in so many different ways that it makes you wonder, what does it look like to build from scratch as an entrepreneur when your family had to build from scratch as immigrants as well? Yeah.
Oh man, it's humbling. It really is humbling. I want to really like take a second to think about that, but I want to bounce that back to you first, and I want to hear your thoughts as I formulate mine. Like, you know, we both like that's something that I think we really do share in common is the way that we came to America. We have this ongoing thing where we're like, that's so American of you, right? So like we have our
you have
running
to sit
jokes,
with the privilege of what it means to be in this world. I think for me, I'm sometimes the most comfortable when I have my back against the wall. And that comes from having nothing. And that comes from knowing you can always innovate and be creative enough to make it through anything life hands you. Yeah. So my boldness is really within my DNA of just believing. And that's something my mom instilled within me. She's like, listen, you can be in a first world country with a loaf of bread and also come from a culture that's willing to slice the last breadcrumb. So it's like, how do you take those two different dualities and really live within the diagram of both to say there's plenty of bread here, but the honor of slicing your last breadcrumb is something that I hold dearly close to my heart because that's humility and that's humanity. So it's like always being mindful of the breadcrumbs while enjoying the whole loaf. Oh, wow. You know? Oh, wow. So I don't know how else to like describe it, but I feel like I'm caught between two different worlds every single day.
Wow. Yeah. I've never heard anything more relatable. That was beautiful. That was like, it's so real because as you're saying it, I'm picturing that, like that is exactly how I feel. And the other thing for me, I would say I do feel a sense of, and I'm working through it now. I feel a sense of pressure to like make it and to ensure that I'm always successful and I can always have enough to pour into my family, enough to go back to my country, enough to always like pour into not just myself, but others. Because of, you know, how I was raised and because I grew up with not much. And there's definitely that pressure there of just having to make it.
Mm-hmm. But it comes with a lot of pressure, right? Because it's like, if you're the one who made it out, how do you reach your fullest potential, but also be mindful of just how much else you can give to, right? Because I've had a lot of immigrant friends who live with the guilt of success as well. Because success isn't always about just you. Now it's the success of your whole village, because they all take ownership of who you've become. So like when I say village values, and I brand the podcast as that, it's about the village that it took. The grandma who was praying for you, the uncle who paid you through like college, right? The you know, the aunts and uncles who sent you letters in the mail, like all the village that it takes. It's so hard to keep that in mind sometimes, because you also want to be tunnel vision too. So it's just kind of like, how do you kind of balance both different worlds?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I believe in taking care of the people who take care of you, right? Yes. Like there's no question about that for me. Yeah. But I also believe in putting on my own oxygen mask first, right? So I make sure that I'm good. I make sure that, you know what,
a lot of millennial immigrants need to hear that oxygen mask.
You have to absolutely make sure you're good first. One thing I think it has pushed me to do, like when I started my business and started making real money, I didn't understand, it's embarrassing to say this, but I want to like own my truth. I didn't understand how to manage my finances. And that is one of the things that held me back from giving in the way that I wanted to, right? So it's like the money was there, but because I wasn't splurging or like spending on anything crazy, but I also like I just didn't understand how to manage it. So I was scared to give it. So for me, it pushed me to understand finances more. And as much as I get scared when I see big numbers, I'm in PR. We don't like numbers that are, I'm like, I don't want to do math. I don't want to do any of this. That's why I'm here, you know? So I had to learn how to understand my finances. And because of that, I was like, okay, I'm good, right? And I see this number and I'm comfortable with this number. And I have a financial advisor who's like, okay, here's how we're going to play here. And here's what you have left over. If there's something, you get to decide how you want to do that, right? I can go buy 10 Chanel bags, or I could say, okay, here's a list of the people who are the reason that I'm here today, or even like check in with me on a daily, or the people who have truly poured into me in some way. And it just feels right to pour into people who pour into you. Right. You know, like if they take care of you, you take care of them. And that's just how like the flow should be. And that's the flow that I'm happy having. Otherwise, like, you know, you're just like getting it for yourself and you're not really doing anything for anyone around you. And like, who wants to be around that?
But I'm so proud of all the success you've had in climbing within the ranks of just like being in places and spaces of excellence. How do you remain authentically you? From the family values to how you were raised to your passion, your purpose, your mission, your vision. How do you kind of maintain that authenticity?
How do I remain me? You know, like that's one of the things that I, at least in recent years, have not struggled with at all, like in any way. I just feel like I know exactly who I am. And I like to live life on my own terms. Like if I wake up, and we had this conversation before starting, if I wake up and I feel like, you know, putting something on that might look wild to everyone else, I'm going to do it because it makes me happy, right? And it's just like when I'm happy and when I'm full, everything around me is going to be fine, no matter how wild I look, whatever the thing is. Like I show up in a way that I want to show up, in a way that pleases me. I pray in the morning, so whatever I feel like God leads me to do, that's what I'm going to do. So it's like from there, it's hard to not be authentically myself, you know? So whenever I hear people struggle with understanding themselves or showing up as like who they are, it's something that has always been hard for me to relate to and fully understand.
So where does that come from? Like the root of always knowing who you are? Was it someone instilling that within you? Was it the community that raised you? Like you knowing there's a crown on your head and you're a queen, and to have known it all along, it's like a lot of people don't have, like they go searching for that crown to find it, right? But where does that come from for you?
I think it's all within, you know, like we go out there looking, we'll say like, I want to travel to find who I am. And I'm like, I don't, like it's here, you know, it's not across the globe, it's right here. And because I'm so rooted in my faith, that is what keeps me rooted in who I am. You know, like that for me defines who I am. So it's impossible. That's why like I personally, like I don't like to force my religion on anyone at all, but it's one of those things where when I hear people talk about it, like I do sometimes want to say, have you tried praying about it? Have you tried God? But I don't want to sound like a preacher, but it's just like, I know this thing brings me so much peace. I know that it is, it allows me to know myself in a way that I wish a lot of people would, because I think it truly is what leads to a high level of happiness and peace.
And self-awareness too.
And self-awareness.
So is it safe to say no imposter syndrome? You enter every room confidently you?
Yeah, I don't, that's another one I never understand. So imposter syndrome, it's like, if you're there, you are supposed to be there, right? Like, we're all human. So like, why do you think that you're not worthy of being in the room that someone else is in? Like, you should never walk in a room thinking like, oh, like, am I supposed to be here? Yeah, you're human just like the other person that's in that room. Like, there's nothing that makes you different other than maybe like your education level, whatever it is. If you have made it into that room, you are supposed to be in that room. So yes, I show up in every room like I am supposed to be there, and I'm grateful to be there, and I'm blessed to be there. If there are people around me who were way more successful, like, what an honor to be in this space with you. Thank you. Like, thanks. I'm glad I'm here. But it's hard to show up as, you know, like, this isn't for me.
So you assess rooms like, if we all got invited for a reason. If we're all at the table, we're at the table as equal participants. I love that. So when it came to launching your own company, what made you say it's time to launch my own company? Okay. And what helped you determine success on your own terms with building your own company?
I like that. Yeah. Okay. Launching my own company. I was not looking to launch my own company. I was looking for almost like a buffer. I was looking for something after quitting my job into like my next role. All I knew was that I was doing things that nothing was bringing me a sense of like, oh, I'm doing this thing that I love. Like, nothing was bringing me a feeling of like, just like I couldn't find passion in anything I was doing. So that's why I ended up leaving my job. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have some clients, because you need money. You need money to do everything. And I was living by myself, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do these things on the side to bring money in. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna like work with this one person on the side, then these 2 people, then these 3 people. And I didn't realize that I was building a business. I was talking to my family about it, but this goes back to the point of, you know, immigrant child, like you can talk to your family, but they look at it as like, when are you going to go get a job? Right. So it was like just one of those things where I didn't realize that I was building this business. So it was never, I wish I had a deeper answer for this, and I wish I could say. You were
just naturally led to it. And
I was really just led to it. And once I saw myself being led to it, I was like, oh, I didn't find a thing that I love, so I'm building a thing that I love.
Yeah.
And I always say I approach things in a very bratty way. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be here. I'm going to find that thing that's for me, and it's going to be perfectly for me. And people like to be like, that's not real. And I'm like, yes, it is. I'm going to make sure it's real. Like, I'm going to make it happen. And that's when I started working with the people I wanted to work with. That's when I like became really bratty in life. I was like, oh yeah,
it's that audacity for me though.
I was like, it's going to work. It's 100% going to work. I was like, I'm going to start my LLC. Yeah. I'm going to do this. I'm going to work with people who have a story that really speaks to me. Speak, you know, and that's really how that happened.
And how did you come up with the brand's name? Talk to me a little bit about it, because it has such a deep meaning.
Yeah. It started as Transformation PR. Transformation PR came from, I was meeting with this guy in Brooklyn. He was is an influencer. And he was just talking about like how he always learned so much from our conversations, and how he feels like our conversations always transformed him, like just intellectually. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like, I want to, like, that's the purpose. I want to be able to work with my clients to transform who they are, in like the best way I possibly can. That was like early thinking. And then I was like, oh, it's a little deeper than that. Like, I got to dig deeper. So I was looking for a name, and came across Speak, which is a mountain in Uganda. And at the time I was like, I only want to work with like Black and brown people to tell positive Black and brown stories, because, you know, when you put the TV on, all you see, like, I live in Brooklyn, all you see are like these horrible stories. And I'm like, where are all the good things? Like, I'm meeting all these amazing Black and brown people, and I feel like I'm not seeing those depicted in media the way I want to. So I was like, okay, well, there's a space for that. That's what I'm going to focus on. And then the messaging just like tweaked along the way, but Speak has been the perfect name for everything the thing has transformed into. Where I am right now is not just working with Black and brown businesses and people and entrepreneurs. It's more just stories that speak to me, right? Like when clients come and they tell me about what they're working on, it could be the most amazing thing in the world. They could have the best budget in the world, but it just doesn't speak to me. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, because I told myself
I can refer you to someone who can do that.
I can,
it's
100%. And I love that. I'm like, let me refer you to this person. I think this is more up their alley. And back to my point about being a brat. I'm like, I'm not bringing this under my umbrella if I don't want to do it. Like, I live for my happiness, for my peace. And then the passion that you pour into it is just going to be different. You know, like, you ever did something that you just don't care about? Like, the energy that you give it is different than when you really love it, than when you really believe in it. You know, like if I work in a client who has something that I really believe in, I'm going to work overtime to make sure that I see them win, versus like, this is just another client. Like, I'm going to just check these boxes. Here's my checklist for the day. Check. Like, that doesn't feel good to me. And I don't feel like that's fair to the client I'm working with, because I pray for my clients. Like, when I take my quarterly breaks, I'm there praying for their success. I'm praying for wisdom to help guide them. I'm praying for wisdom to like just help navigate the business that they're in. So it's like, if you don't want to be prayed for, don't come over here. Because that is me at the core. Like, that's what you're gonna. That is a part of the package. I'm not gonna put it in my scope of work, because it's who I am. But it 100% is like, that is what you get. You know. So it's like, if it's not speaking to me, I can't do it. It's not for me.
In finding your superpowers and finding your value, let's really talk about how you also value your value by the price tag you put on it. How did you learn through the years of working in the industry to charge what you're worth? Because that's something people struggle with as entrepreneurs, because you don't want to overcharge because you're scared you might lose them. You don't want to undercharge because then like something you do really great at, someone else is overcharging. It's like, how do you kind of, dig through the battles of the price tag you put on the service you provide?
Wow. I would say it really depends on your level of expertise and how much you believe in it, right? So when I started Transformation PR, I remember there was one point when I was working full time and I was working with people on the side, I was letting people pay like $50 a month for PR, which is wild to me now. Like I'm looking at $50 a month to now like $10K and up a month. You know, it's just like, it's so different. And I look back and I don't regret that. Like, I'm glad that I did those $50 a month, because for me, that was me getting my feet wet in being able to work with people outside of like, the umbrella of an agency and like, all of the people who were responsible for the extras. But when people say this thing of like charging what you're worth, I always think like, you have to be really honest with yourself, like those $50 a month clients for me, like during that time, I didn't know how to like really run things functionally. Like, I was experimenting. So I didn't feel like it was fair.
They were also taking a chance on you.
They were taking a chance on me too. Yeah. So I was like, I looked at it as like, I'm grateful for this opportunity to try this thing out. Like, you're still going to pay me for my time, but it's not going to be anything crazy. And then when you start to feel
your Netflix and your Hulu.
Exactly. Barely now. So, once I felt more confident in the thing, and I think that's what you have to not just feel confident in it, you have to see the results of it. So once I started seeing clients get results, I was like, okay, we can like start to turn the price up a little bit here. And then, like, you have to also look at the amount of time you're taking. So now it's much more detailed. I don't believe in like just slapping a price tag on it. It's like, how much time is this thing going to take? How much energy is it going to take? How much traveling am I going to have to, like, what is the, like, just how is it going to take away from my time? Because time is money. So I'm charging for the time it takes to do all of this stuff.
One of the first people that I told about Village Values was Drea. We were sitting at a Mexican restaurant.
Was it Mexican or was it Thai?
It was before Thai.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was before Thai. And I was like, this is what the logo looks like. I really want to focus on building content centered around culture and village building. And what you were able to pour into me at that time, I don't even think you realized how much I needed it. But you were just like, no, build it and see what happens. When the universe knows that this is what you're doing, they're going to do everything possible to support you and to get behind you. So the reason why I wanted you to be a guest on this podcast, because I wanted to hand select the first few people with so much intention, was just like, oh, she's part of my village and she can't leave by choice. I'm stuck.
Happy to be here. I'm so okay with you throwing away the key. You know, I think it's hard to come across good, genuine people in life, and working in the industry I'm in, I didn't realize that at first. Like I hate to say it this way, but I think I took genuine, authentic friendships for granted. I thought they were just everywhere, right? And then you learn that there's so much more, and you need friends in life. You don't just that's a part of being successful too, right? Like I don't want to just have my business, and I don't want to just have I want genuine connections and people who I can really sit down and talk to, and I care about pouring into people and people pouring into me. Like I want those that mutual mutually beneficial relationship, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
But just like having good people in your circle that you can call and just spend time with.
It's hard to find.
I know.
Because the energy of it all can be so draining, and that it can really, feel such a defeating industry. Because I'm sure every text message or email that you get, it's an ask. But how many people genuinely ask, how are you? Yeah. How's your heart? Are you okay? So when you find people who ask those really intentional questions, you just want to cling on to them, because
that's why I said you can throw away the key. I'm totally fine with it. I've already decided.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
So, yeah.
What advice do you have for young women trying to find their place and their confidence and their sense of identity, not only in the entertainment industry, but in all entrepreneurial fields? Something that's worked so well for you that you want to kind of help others achieve.
Yeah, I think one thing that I valued very early on in my career were mentors, right? Like having people who could get to know me on a personal level and understand my heart and my desires and my passion and just who I am, and talking to them, and not just talking to them, but spending time listening. I think a lot of times when we're young, we think we know everything there is to know, and there's so much value in just listening to people, but also you filter out the things that you feel are for you, right? Which is why that quiet time, I also recommend quiet time so much, because you take the things that you are being given from your mentors and then you sit with it, but you don't just dismiss it. You really sit with it. You meditate on it, whatever that thing is, in your quiet time. You take all of it and you say, okay, what things am I going to pull? How am I going to take all of these things that I've been given, all of these puzzle pieces, and build my beautiful picture? So definitely mentors and quiet time with whatever you're given, and listening. Oh my gosh, I wish I listened a little bit more.
When you were younger,
when I was younger,
to this day?
When I was younger, I thought I knew everything.
Absolutely.
And the older I got, I realized I don't know everything, and there's so much that I'm constantly learning. I heard this quote once where it's young people think that they know everything, and old people know they know nothing at all. So it's just, for me, it just feels like I always want to keep my mind open to things. And that's something I always recommend to any mentee. It's keep your mind open to learning, but also filter the things through, right? You have to have the discernment to say okay, that's what I should pull, and that's probably not for me. So the two things, when they are in harmony, then that's the perfect duo to me.
There's a proverb from Sudan that says, respect the one who saw the sun before you. Sometimes you can gaze at a sun in your own lifetime and not know so many others stared into it before you. And so many have walked the same hardships you've walked and found a way to navigate around it. But if you look at your hardships as only something uniquely you, that only you are going through, you kind of dismiss the fact that we all end up walking through the same types of situations. So when they say respect the one who saw the sun before you, it's okay to ask them, what did they see? And how did they see it through? To realize how you can navigate that same horizon. Because the horizon doesn't belong to just any of us, it's all of us, right? Yeah. So I try to really, you asked me earlier, how does my upbringing play into who I am? I try to find wisdom in moments like that. Because it's not textbooks that can teach us those things. It's not degrees, right? It's not accolades or certifications. It's just being gently human. And just knowing that we all go through the same thing. You're not the first to go through depression. You're not the first to go through mental health in your family. Maybe you're the first to speak up about it, right? So it's just a matter of really just knowing universally we're all connected with our hardships. And that's what makes us who we are.
No, for sure. For sure. And I think that just to add on to that, I think something I'm trying to be better at is understanding that when people come with just different understandings or like, you know, you talked about like speaking to people who were here first, right? Like everyone has a different perspective, and it's not bad to hear theirs, right? Like if we look at this mug, for example, right? Like we all have different perspectives in life. Like over here, I see red because of my lips, and you're like, no, it's all white. We could argue forever and ever about that, but like no one's wrong, right? So it's all about perspective.
You see that side of it.
Exactly, and it's also based on where we're sitting, based on our experiences. So it's just really beautiful when we take the time to sit and listen to others, listen to other perspectives, but understand that like we really don't know everything there is to know. We know nothing at all. It's all based on just our perspective. So sometimes you should just listen, have conversations.
Yeah.
You know, sit and talk about why you see the mug the way you see it, and I can tell you, and then through conversation you'll realize like, oh, we can live in perfect harmony because it's just based on our perspective.
Absolutely. Could you do me a favor and define village values for me? When you hear village values, whether it's the values that were ingrained within your soul through your family's history or the villages that you found along the way, when you hear the phrase village values, what comes to your mind?
I think, okay, I'll give you what I envision. I envision coming in, taking my shoes off at the door, saying this is a space that I respect so much, so I'm going to treat it with care because the people who are in this building have poured into me and I want to pour into them. I'm going to show up with food, I'm going to show up with cookies, and I'm going to love them because we're going to be in this space, this shared space, pouring into each other. So I think about a clean, safe space with good food, conversation, and open conversation where we're not like free of judgment, and just really pouring in. Like for me, that's what comes to mind. Like, I don't know, I envision, maybe I'm hungry, but I really envision just walking in here with food and kicking my shoes off and saying, hey girl, let me hug you. Let's talk about our day. Let me pour back into you the same way that you poured into me. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on Village Values. And to all of our wonderful audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube. Also follow the platform on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. And also on Instagram at The Village Values with your homegirl, Neima Abdulahi, AKA Neema Dreamer. See you next time.